Well, good day. Today's a quick little video about paper size, orientation, and margins in Google Docs. The size of an ordinary, everyday piece of paper that you use every day in America has a special name, and this name is called letter size paper. Ordinary paper that we use at school is called letter size paper. Letter size. If you measured it with a ruler, it would be 8.5 inches across, and it would be 11 inches from top to bottom. 8.5 by 11. We say 8.5 by 11 because we always give the number across the top first and the number up and down second. 8.5 by 11. In America, we also use legal size paper, and it's a little longer. It's still 8.5 inches across, but it's 14 inches up and down. So we have letter size and legal size. Are you writing notes? Are you taking notes? I hope so. We always say 8.5 by 14. Give the number across the top first, and then the number up and down is second. Letter size paper, legal size paper. Almost no countries in the world use this paper besides us. Very few people in the whole world use 8.5 by 11 or 8.5 by 14. It's very rare. Here are the countries that use standard paper like we do. The United States, Canada, and Mexico, the Dominican Republic and Panama, Chile, and the Philippines, and that's about it. Nobody else uses paper like us. Everybody else uses A4 paper. A4 is what they call their paper. They don't call it letter size. They call it A4. Here are the countries that use A4 paper. Just about everybody in the whole world, except us. A4 paper is a little bit more narrow than our paper, and it's a little bit longer. And here you can see the comparison. The red one is the US paper, and the blue one is A4. A little bit longer. Well, let's just talk about paper in America. We use letter size paper almost all the time. In Google Docs, here's how to change the paper size. You go to File, and underneath File, you go down to Page Setup, and sure enough, in Page Setup, it has paper size. Now I want to talk about orientation. Orientation means is the paper just straight up and down, or is the paper turned sideways? Straight up and down paper is called portrait orientation. But if you turn the paper sideways, that's called landscape orientation. There's portrait and landscape. Are you taking notes? Let's talk about portrait. Portrait, we already know, is 8.5 by 11 inches. That's a standard size piece of paper in America. It's letter size paper. If you were going to paint a picture of Queen Elizabeth, you might set your canvas up on an easel and get all your paints ready, and you would probably turn the canvas this way, portrait, and you'd draw a portrait of the Queen. Landscape is turned sideways. It's 11 by 8.5. We always give the number across the top first, 11 by 8.5. If you were going to go outside and draw a painting of a beautiful mountain and rivers and trees and grass, you would probably turn your canvas this way, landscape. There's portrait and there's landscape. Those are the two orientations, and here's how you change them in Google Docs. In Google Docs, you go to the exact same place. You go to File, you go down to Page Setup, and sure enough, under Page Setup, there's orientation, portrait, and landscape. Now I want to talk about margins. Margins. Margins is the white space here between the edge of the paper and where you start typing. We don't type with our letters on the very, very, very edge of the paper. No, we leave a little space there, and that little space is called the margin. The margins go all the way around, left, right, top, and bottom. Google Docs will make a 1-inch margin, but you could change the margins, but it's 1-inch margins by default. Well, what does default mean? Default means a choice that the computer made for you. When you start typing letters, you might notice that the letters are black and the paper is white. Did you set it to be black? No. The computer made it black. That's called the default. The default is a choice that the computer makes for you. For instance, when you start typing, they're not giant, huge letters when you start typing. They're just ordinary, everyday letters, smaller letters, and we'll go into that in the next video. You can change the size of the letters, but they have to start out as something, and that something is called the default. The margins are 1 inch by default. If you want to change the margins, you go to the same place. File, you go to Page Setup, and sure enough, the margins are over there. Well, that's about all there is to it.